The breadbasket hit the floor when Raymond Ashford's fingers locked around Simone's throat from behind her chair. One hand, no warning, the way a man straightens a crooked picture frame. He leaned down close to her ear and told the dinner table, told all 4 guests and his own mother, that Simone had embarrassed him for the last time. His voice was level. That was what made the room go cold. Not the hand, the voice. Candace Pruitt was seated to his left. She had been seated there for 40 minutes, in the chair that had always been Simone's chair, wearing a silk blouse the color of a bruise. When Raymond's hand closed around his wife's throat, Candace looked at the table, and then looked at the guests, and then applauded once, slowly. Her rings caught the candlelight on the downstroke. It was the most deliberate sound in the room. 4 guests stared at their plates. A woman named Patricia, who had known Simone since college, looked at her own fork. Raymond's mother, Loretta Ashford, lifted her wine glass and took a long sip and set it back down without a word. The Nanny cam above the buffet blinked red. It had been streaming for 11 minutes. 60 miles south, in a glass tower on Poydras Street in New Orleans, a man named Elias Fontenot was in the middle of a board call when the alert came through on his secondary phone. He looked at the screen. He looked at it for 4 seconds. Then he set his pen down, pushed back from the table, and stood up. He did not excuse himself from the call. He simply walked to the window and watched. Simone did not reach for Raymond's hand. She did not make a sound. She looked straight ahead at the centerpiece, white tulips in a low crystal vase. And when Raymond finally released her and straightened up and smoothed his jacket, she reached for her napkin and folded it once along the original crease. Then she set it back in her lap. Nobody noticed she was not afraid. That was the part nobody in that room would understand until much later. They saw a woman absorbing humiliation. They did not see a woman who had already decided what came next. Raymond settled back into his chair and reached for his glass. "Let's not let the food get cold," he said. Candace smiled at the table like she had just watched something entertaining. "Of course," she said. "Simone, do you want to freshen up?" The question landed like a palm against glass, polite on the surface, designed to remove her from the room. Simone looked at Candace for 1 full second. Then she picked up her fork. "I'm fine," she said. "Thank you." After the guests left, after the door closed on Patricia's apologetic eyes and the other 3 faces that had found the tablecloth so fascinating, after Loretta kissed Raymond on the cheek and did not look at Simone at all, Raymond went to his office and closed the door. Candace moved through the kitchen like she lived there. Simone walked upstairs. The bathroom was cold. The tile floor, the porcelain tub, the single overhead light that had always buzzed slightly, and that Simone had asked Raymond to fix 9 months ago, and that he had never fixed. She sat on the edge of the tub and looked at her hands. They were completely still. She had been in this marriage for 6 years. The cruelty had never been loud. That was the design of it. Raymond Ashford was not the kind of man who broke things. He was the kind of man who slowly, methodically removed them. A word in the right moment that made her doubt herself. A locked office door during tax season. A comment at a dinner party. So smooth, so reasonable, that left her smaller than she had been before they arrived. The kind of erosion that leaves no bruise but carves a woman hollow if she lets it go long enough. She had not let it go long enough. She reached into her robe pocket and touched a folded envelope. She had been carrying it for 3 days, her father's handwriting on the front. She knew the weight of it, not light, not heavy, something specific and deliberate. And she had been waiting. She did not know what she was waiting for exactly. She pressed her thumb against the seal and then stopped and put it back in her pocket. Not yet. There was a second envelope on her nightstand, also from her father, also unopened. He had never written her twice in the same week in her adult life. She lay down on top of the covers without changing her clothes and listened to Candace laughing at something downstairs. The laugh was designed to carry. Everything Candace did was designed to carry. Morning came through the curtains the color of old paper. Simone dressed early. She came downstairs to find Candace in her kitchen, in her robe, a white cotton robe from the hook behind the master bathroom door, pressing the plunger on Simone's French press with the practiced ease of someone who had done it before. Raymond sat at the island in a dress shirt, reading something on his phone, not looking up. The coffee mug Candace chose was the one with the small chip on the handle, the one Simone's mother had brought back from a market in Savannah 8 years ago. The one Simone had been drinking her coffee from every single morning since her mother died. She stood in the kitchen doorway and watched Candace fill that mug. "She's up," Candace said, not turning around. She said it to Raymond, loud enough for Simone to hear. "You want me to make a second cup, or—" She left the question open. The pause was surgical. It placed Simone in the position of a visitor who had wandered into someone else's morning. Raymond finally looked up. "There's enough in the press," he said. He did not say good morning. He did not ask about her throat, which was still tender at the collar. Simone walked to the counter. She saw the 2 envelopes from her father. She had left them there the night before. And she saw that they were gone. She looked at the counter. She looked at the trash can under the cabinet. Candace was rinsing a spoon. At the sink, her back still turned. "I cleared some of the clutter," she said. Simone walked to the trash can and opened it. Both envelopes were on top, mixed in with coffee grounds and a paper towel. She reached in and took them out. She did not look at Candace. She did not say anything. She pressed both envelopes against her chest and held them there for a moment, like something almost lost. Raymond set his phone down. "Simone." His voice was gentle in the particular way that meant the opposite. "I think it would be good for you to stay with someone for a few days, while things settle." She looked at him. "You mean while you settle?" "I mean while we figure things out." He gestured vaguely at the kitchen, at the air. "This isn't working. You can see that." Candace said nothing. She set the spoon on the counter with a small, deliberate click and turned to lean against the sink and look at Simone with the specific expression of someone watching a slow and inevitable process reach its conclusion. But he didn't know she had already made one phone call. Simone went to get her passport. She knew where Raymond kept his files, the fireproof drawer in the bottom right of his office desk, behind the drawer that held the chargers and the extra keys. She had put her own passport there 3 years ago for safekeeping and never moved it. She opened the drawer. The passport was there, and behind it she found a manila folder she had never seen. She did not sit down. She stood exactly where she was and opened the folder. The first document was a property deed. The Baton Rouge house, co-owned in her understanding, retitled 11 months ago, solely in Raymond Ashford's name. She read the date twice. Then she read the notary's signature. Then she turned to the second document. It was a corporate dissolution filing. The company name was hers, her interior design business, the one she had built from nothing in the 3 years before they married, the one she had put into dormancy when the marriage demanded more of her time. Her name was on a signature line. She looked at the signature. She looked at it for a long time. Her hands did not shake. She pulled out her phone and photographed every page in the folder. She replaced the folder exactly as she found it. She picked up the passport. She closed the drawer. At the door, she stopped. She turned and looked once at the Nanny cam above the buffet. It was still blinking red. She looked at it for 1 full second. Then she nodded, barely, almost nothing, and she walked out. She did not pack a bag that morning. She would come back for things. Right now, she needed a parking lot and a phone and enough quiet to think without Candace's coffee on the stove. The accountant she found was named Derek Okafor. She got his name from a lawyer she trusted, paid for the first consultation in cash, and sat across from him in a conference room that smelled like printer toner and watched him pull up 6 years of documents on a laptop screen. "Walk me through the business dissolution," he said. "Start from the beginning." She told him what she knew. He typed. He pulled up a second window. He was quiet for a long time. "The dissolution was filed 14 months ago," he said. "The retained earnings, $340,000, were transferred to a holding company called Crescent Tier Holdings, LLC. He turned the laptop toward her. "Do you recognize that name?" "No," she said. "Raymond Ashford is the sole managing member." He paused. "Your signature on the dissolution is notarized. Is that your signature?" She looked at it. "No." He typed something. He pulled up another window. "This is going to take me a few days," he said, "but I need you to understand something before you leave." He looked at her directly. "What I'm already seeing, this is not a mistake. This is architecture." She held that word on the drive home. Architecture, not a mistake. A design, something built. She called Derek Okafor back in 4 days. She was in the parking lot of a library in Metairie. The sun was going down behind the building, and the light through her windshield was orange and flat. "Tell me," she said. He told her. 6 years of joint account activity. Small transfers in year 2, then larger, always during a trip she'd taken or a project that had consumed her. A pattern tightening as it went. Total amount, just over $1.1 million. Consistent destination, Crescent Tier Holdings. She pressed her thumb against the steering wheel. "There's more," he said. She closed her eyes. "Tell me." 2 of the larger transfers have a co-signatory. He paused. Loretta Ashford. The name sat in the car with her. Raymond's mother. Loretta, who had lifted her wine glass. Loretta, who had kissed her son on the cheek and walked past Simone without looking at her, as though she had already been subtracted from the inventory of people who mattered. "She's been receiving a monthly stipend from Crescent Tier for 4 years, Derek said. $12,000 a month. What he said next changed everything. "The holding company is under preliminary SEC scrutiny," he said. "Not because of what was done to you, because Crescent Tier was used as a pass-through for funds from a community renovation project in the 7th Ward of New Orleans. Raymond was the fiduciary for a co-op investment group, elderly residents, homeowners. They gave him $2.2 million to manage a building rehabilitation fund. That money is gone." She sat in the parking lot for a long time after he finished, long enough for the orange light to become gray and the library to close. Then she drove to a gas station, went inside, bought a bottle of water, and stood at the counter and drank half of it in one long pull. She took out her phone. She scrolled to a number she had not called in 4 months. She pressed call. It rang twice. "Daddy?" A pause. A breath. "Simone?" His voice was the voice she had grown up inside, warm and certain and unhurried. "I've been watching the cam. I called your aunt. I've been—" He stopped. He steadied. "Are you safe?" "Yes." "Are you somewhere quiet?" "A parking lot." A long pause. She could hear him thinking. "I already have attorneys," he said. "I've had them since the night of the dinner. I was waiting for you." "I know," she said. Daddy. She stopped. She looked through the windshield at the gas station lights against the dark. I'm ready. He did not say good. He did not say, I told you so. He did not say anything except, come home first, then we work. Elias Fontenot was the founder and chairman of Fontenot Community Capital, a private investment institution with $800 million in managed assets and controlling stakes in 3 Louisiana real estate development firms. He had built it across 40 years from a single-room office on Magazine Street. He was 67 years old and had never once, in Simone's memory, raised his voice to make a point. He had never needed to. She did not know he had retained attorneys the night of the dinner. She did not know his SEC contact was already reviewing crescent-tier filings. She did not know until she drove home to New Orleans and sat in his kitchen and watched him lay documents on the table, how much he had been quietly building while she was still folding napkins in Baton Rouge. He doesn't know who you are, Elias said, not cruelly, as a fact. He knows who I am. He knows who he decided you were. Elias looked at her. That is not the same thing. She had been waiting for this moment for a long time. She did not smile. 3 weeks passed. Raymond and Candace moved through them at full velocity, which was the fatal blind spot. Raymond's assumption that momentum was the same thing as safety. He had always believed that if he stayed busy enough, stayed confident enough, controlled the narrative tightly enough, there was no accounting that could catch him. He confused his own certainty for other people's blindness. The event he had been planning for months was a rededication ceremony for the 7th Ward Co-op project, a public celebration at the Roosevelt Hotel in New Orleans. Investors, city officials, community leaders, press. Raymond had scheduled this event to cement his public identity as a philanthropist, a developer, a man of consequence. He had sent 300 invitations on heavyweight paper stock with his name embossed at the top. He did not know that Elias Fontenot had quietly ensured that several of those 300 invitations had gone to very specific people. The week before the event, a local TV crew set up in the Roosevelt lobby, and Raymond gave a pre-event interview in a dark blue suit with a pocket square. He was polished and gracious and unhurried. He talked about community investment and intergenerational wealth and the responsibility of those with resources to those without. He mentioned the co-op project by name. He mentioned the families of the 7th Ward by name. He said the word restructuring once, smoothly, the way a man says a word he has practiced. He did not mention Simone. She had been efficiently removed from his public narrative, the way you remove a piece of furniture that never quite fit the room. Candace was in the ballroom while Raymond gave his interview, circulating among the early arrivals in a champagne-colored dress. She was laughing at something a city councilman's aide had said. On her left wrist, just above the watch, was a gold bracelet with a single charm. A small bird, wings open. It had been a gift to Simone on their 2nd wedding anniversary. Raymond had told Simone 4 months earlier that it had been lost in a move. Candace wore it the way she wore everything of Simone's, as though ownership were simply a matter of possession. 2 floors down from the ballroom in the hotel bar, Simone sat alone at a corner table. She was wearing something plain, a navy dress, nothing remarkable. She ordered water. She sat with her hands folded on the table and looked at the door. A woman from the 7th Ward recognized her from a community meeting 2 years ago. A woman named Dora, who sat down without being invited and put her hand over Simone's. "You all right, baby?" Dora asked. Simone looked at her. "I came to see something finished," she said. Dora looked at her for a long moment. She did not understand what she meant, but something in the way Simone said it made Dora leave her hand where it was for another moment before she stood and went back to her table. On the 14th floor, in a suite with a view of the city, Elias Fontenot sat at a table with 3 attorneys and a woman from the Louisiana Attorney General's office who had flown in that afternoon. There were documents on the table and a laptop open to a financial spreadsheet and a flash drive that contained 53 minutes of Nanny cam footage, already logged as evidence, already reviewed by 3 separate parties. In the back of the ballroom, at a table near the emergency exit, an SEC field officer named Warren sat with a glass of iced tea he had not touched. In the lobby, 2 investigators from the AG's office stood near the coat check in plain clothes, speaking to each other in the unhurried way of people who are waiting for a specific moment rather than watching for it. Everyone in that room would remember exactly where they were standing. Simone rode the elevator up from the bar 40 minutes before the program began. She went to a restroom on the mezzanine level and stood at the mirror. She looked at herself for a long time. She was wearing the navy dress. She reached into the small bag she had brought and took out the ivory-colored dress. Structured, clean-lined, the one she had worn on the morning she had gone to the courthouse and registered her interior design business for the first time 11 years ago. She changed. She folded the navy dress and put it in the bag. She pulled her hair back with a single pin. She looked in the mirror one more time. She picked up the manila folder from the bag. Inside were 3 documents: the forged dissolution filing, the property deed retitled in Raymond's name, and a single printed page. A summary of the holding company's transactions, prepared by Derek Okafor and reviewed by Elias's attorneys. She held the folder in one hand. No bag, no phone visible. She walked out of the restroom. The Roosevelt Ballroom was full. 200 people, chandeliers casting soft light over round tables, and pressed linens, and the hum of a gathering that believed itself to be a celebration. Raymond was at the podium. He had just finished thanking several city officials by name. He was building toward the centerpiece of his remarks: the vision, the community, the legacy. He was very good at this part. It was the part he had practiced the longest. He did not see her enter. She walked from the back of the room toward the front. She did not rush. People stepped aside, not because she demanded it, but because something in the way she moved cleared the space. She reached the front of the room as Raymond paused to glance at his notes. She stepped forward and stood beside the podium. Raymond looked at her. For 1/2 second, something moved across his face that was not quite surprise and not quite fear, more like the recognition of a variable he had not accounted for. Then he smoothed it. He put his hand on the edge of the podium and tilted his chin and said very quietly, "Simone, this is not the time." "I know exactly what time it is," she said. She opened the folder. She took out the corporate dissolution document and placed it on the podium in front of him. Flat, so the room could see she had put something down. "My name is Simone Fontenot Ashford," she said. She did not use a microphone. She did not need one. The room had already gone quiet in the particular way that 200 people go quiet when they understand that something real is happening. "My signature on this document is forged. The $340,000 from my dissolved business was transferred into a company called Crescent Tier Holdings, which is solely managed by the man at this podium." Raymond's hand tightened on the edge of the podium. He opened his mouth. He did not speak, because at that moment the large screen behind the podium, the screen that had been displaying a slide about community investment and the 7th Ward, went dark for 2 seconds, and then filled with footage. The footage was 47 seconds. A dinner table, a breadbasket on the floor, A man's hand closing around a woman's throat from behind her chair. A woman in a silk blouse applauding once, slowly. An older woman lifting a wine glass. The timestamp in the corner read 3 weeks earlier. The footage was clear. The room watched all 47 seconds in complete silence. When it ended, the screen went dark again. Raymond did not move. He was holding the podium with both hands now. He looked at Simone. She looked back at him without expression. She had already said what she came to say. She had one more thing. From near the back of the room, a woman stood up. She was 71 years old. Her name was Claudette Broussard. She had lived on the same block in the 7th Ward for 53 years. She had contributed $40,000. Her retirement savings, accumulated over a decade of careful living, to the co-op renovation fund Raymond had administered as its fiduciary. That money had disappeared 18 months ago. Raymond had told her it was a market loss. Claudette Broussard stood up and said her name. She said her address. She said it clearly and without tremor, the way a woman says something she has been waiting to say in the right room. "He told me I had lost my money in a down market," she said. "I want this room to know that I never agreed to any market investment. I gave him cash to fix a building, my building, where my grandchildren visit me." She sat back down. Raymond looked for his mother. Loretta Ashford was already moving. She had pushed back her chair and was walking toward the side exit with her purse held against her body. A tall man in a dark suit stepped into her path and said something to her quietly. She stopped. She looked at him. She looked back at Raymond. Raymond turned to look for Candace. Candace had taken 3 steps backward from the position she'd been holding near the front of the room. Her champagne-colored dress caught the light. Her hand moved, unconsciously, with no theater to it, to her own throat. She was looking at the screen where the footage had been, and her face had gone through several things in a short amount of time and had arrived somewhere pale and still. She looked at Raymond. He looked at her. He looked at Simone. Simone was standing with the folder in her hand. She did not speak again. She had said everything she had come to say. She looked at Raymond Ashford one last time with no particular expression. Not triumph, not grief, not the satisfaction of a woman who has been waiting. And then she turned and walked back through the crowd, which parted for her exactly as it had when she entered. The SEC officer set down his iced tea and stood up. Near the door, one of Elias's attorneys spoke briefly to the cluster of press that had been covering the event, her voice low and precise. She named Candace Pruitt as a co-signatory on 3 of Crescent Tier Holdings' outgoing transfers. She said it once. She did not repeat it. The chandeliers kept burning. The flower arrangements on the tables did not move. The Roosevelt Hotel ballroom held 200 people in complete silence for 4 full seconds before the room began to move again. And when it did, it moved away from the podium and toward the exits and toward phones and toward each other. And Raymond Ashford stood at the podium, alone with his hands still on its edges and his prepared remarks still in his jacket pocket, and the room emptied around him like water leaving a bowl. In the weeks that followed, events moved with the specific, impersonal efficiency of systems designed to do exactly this. Raymond was arrested on wire fraud and breach of fiduciary duty charges on a Tuesday morning. The Baton Rouge house, titled solely in his name, which had seemed like a protection and had become evidence, was immediately subject to asset recovery proceedings by the Attorney General's office. His name was removed from the development firm's website within 48 hours. 3 business partners issued public statements within 72. The statements were carefully worded. They all contained the phrase, "no knowledge of." Loretta Ashford did not make a statement. Her name appeared in the filings as a co-signatory and a recipient of funds. The monthly stipend she had been receiving for 4 years became a prosecutorial exhibit. She was photographed once outside her attorney's office, a small woman in a large coat, not looking at the camera, and the photograph had nothing in it that resembled the woman who had lifted her wine glass at a dinner table and watched her daughter-in-law absorb what had been done to her. Candace Pruitt was named in the filings as a knowing participant in 3 transfers, not a victim, a participant. The distinction mattered legally, and it mattered in the way the coverage handled her. The holding company transfers dried up within days of the event. The bracelet, the one with the small bird charm, wings open, was catalogued as a recoverable asset by Simone's attorneys and returned. There was one photograph of Candace taken outside the courthouse several weeks later. She was alone. Her champagne-colored dress was not in the photograph. She was wearing something gray, and the expression on her face was one Simone never saw and did not seek out. Simone did not give press interviews. She filed for divorce through her attorney. She did not post anything on social media. She did not attend any proceedings she was not required to attend. On the Monday morning after the Roosevelt Hotel event, she drove to the Secretary of State's office in Baton Rouge and re-registered her interior design business under a new name. She filled out the form in her own handwriting. She paid the filing fee. She folded her copy of the registration and put it in her coat pocket. It was a different coat from the one she had worn the night she took the letters from the trash. But she still put things in pockets. Some habits are not habits. Some habits are just how a person carries what matters. The night after she re-registered the business, she was standing outside the Roosevelt Hotel, waiting for her car from the valet, when Claudette Broussard found her. Claudette was small and moved slowly, and wore a hat with a brim that Simone recognized as Sunday church wear. She came to stand in front of Simone, and she took Simone's hand in both of her own, dry and warm, the grip of someone who had been squeezing the good out of hard things for 7 decades. "Your father raised somebody," Claudette said. Simone looked down at their hands. She nodded. Her throat moved. She could not speak. She did not need to. Claudette held her hands for another moment, and then released them, and walked to her own car with the careful, deliberate steps of a woman who knows where she is going and is in no hurry to pretend otherwise. Elias did not come to the Roosevelt Hotel that evening. He did not need to be in the room. His presence had been in the attorneys, and in the screen, and in the 53 minutes of footage, and in the SEC officer, with the untouched iced tea. He called Simone at 11 that night, and when she answered, he said only, "You okay?" "Yes," she said. "Good," he said. And then, "Your grandmother wants you to come for dinner Sunday." She laughed. It was the first time she had laughed in a long time. It came out small and surprised, like something that had been waiting in a corner of her chest and hadn't known the door was open. She did not go back to the Baton Rouge house. She had a key to a small apartment in the Garden District, one she had been paying rent on quietly for 6 weeks, since the morning she had photographed the documents in Raymond's drawer and understood that she would need somewhere to go. The apartment had tall windows and curtains that were not quite right for the light, cheap fabric, the kind that came with the apartment, and a counter that had been wiped clean by the previous tenant and not yet had anything placed on it that made it hers. She changed that. She brought the breadbasket. It had been in the back of her car since the night she left the Baton Rouge house. She had not thought about it consciously. She had gathered things quickly in the dark, and the bread basket was on the counter, and she had put it under her arm, along with the coat and the letters and the document copies and the one photograph she wanted. She had not thought about why she took it. She thought about it now. She set it on the counter. She went out and bought a loaf of bread and put it inside. She stood back and looked at it. Early morning light came through the cheap curtains. It was not flattering light. It was honest light, the kind that shows everything as it is, without improvement, and Simone had always preferred that. She had always preferred rooms that told her the truth. She sat at the small table by the window with the 2 envelopes from her father in front of her. She had been carrying them for weeks. She picked up the first one, the one that had arrived 3 days before the dinner, the one that had been in her robe pocket the night she sat on the edge of the bathtub and held it without opening it. She ran her thumb under the seal. The letter was 2 pages. Her father's handwriting was still precise after 67 years, the same handwriting she had grown up reading on birthday cards and the occasional note left on the kitchen counter when she was a child, and he had left before she woke up. She read it slowly. She did not read it quickly, the way you read something you are afraid of. She read it the way you read something you have been waiting for. We do not need to say what was in the letter. We only need to see her face as she reads it. The way the tension in her shoulders does not fall dramatically. It simply loosens, millimeter by millimeter, the way something tightly wound releases when the right hand finally touches it. The way she presses her lips together once and then breathes through her nose and then continues reading. The way, when she finishes the last line, she folds the letter along its original creases and holds it for a moment with both hands. She set it down on the table. She looked at the second envelope. She did not open it. Not today. Some things you leave sealed until you are ready for more. She picked up her phone and called her grandmother. The phone rang twice. "Simone, baby." The voice was 81 years old and had the specific warmth of a person who has never once doubted that you would call. Simone sat down at the table, and the morning light came through the curtains and moved across the floor, and she said, "Morning, Grandma." And what came after that belonged only to them. The bread basket sat on the counter, a loaf of bread inside it. The door to the apartment was propped open with a paperback book she had been meaning to read, and the morning air was moving through, and the curtains lifted slightly and fell, and the light continued doing what light does in a room where a woman is beginning again. She left the house in the middle of the night with 3 things: the bread basket, her father's letter, and herself. She got back everything else. Subscribe so you never miss the next one. She didn't beg for her life back. She built the conditions for justice, and she walked in when the room was ready.